Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Let me just get my volume right here. There we go. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah. Okay. Got to ease myself back into this podcasting thing. It's like sea legs, right? You just kind of lose them. If you're doing it every day, you just get in the groove, but when you take a break, you kind of lose a bit of your momentum. Well, what is there to talk to you about in this world? The more likely question is, what is there not to talk about right now? It seems as though everything is out there now. So, well, let's just get into it. I think the first thing that we want to talk about is the resignation of Justin Trudeau and what this means, okay? Who was Trudeau? Who are the parties or the groups that we're dealing with now? What are their agendas? How are they similar? How are they different? Are they aware of each other's agendas? At the level of the elites, are they aware of each other's agendas? Well, I would suggest that, yeah, it would be pretty impossible not to know what each other's agendas are at that level. I think pretty impossible indeed. So it was almost, if you look at it closely, it was almost like a decree of the incoming Trump administration that he would not work with Justin Trudeau, which I found very, very, very interesting. And now when I search Trudeau on X, I don't get anything. Just comes up a big, huh. Anyways. Now, what we have this time around, which we did not have the first time around, was a basis of comparison. You know, who is Donald Trump? Who is he when he's president of the United States? What is he likely to do? What has he been saying he's going to do? What is he really going to do? All of these things were complete unknowns in 2016, and they were completely unknown in the sense that I don't think even Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. Which is very interesting because it seems as though this time around he does seem to know what he's going to do. The hardest thing to know at this point is who the various groups are that are involved in the power plays that we see going on in front of us now in the world. Who are the various groups? What is their true name? What is their true goal? What is their true agenda? Okay? Because there's nothing new anywhere in the world, folks. It's just repackaged or redone or retold. The human story is the oldest story in the universe. The first time it was told, and it's just been a repetition, a generational repetition ever since the first story was told. A very simple creature to figure out. We're not that complicated. I suppose we can become complicated, but that requires certain conditions to be met and certain growth to be undertaken, but for the most part, we're remarkably consistent animal. No big surprises at all with human beings. So if that's true, then who are these globalist institutions? Okay? Who is the World Economic Forum? What are they by another name? How long have they been around? Who's their real controlling hand? And how did they gain so much power and attention in a relatively short period of time, which was 50 years? Now, it was a very interesting 50 years. 52 years, actually. And they've been remarkably consistent with this institution. Remarkably consistent. Same figurehead throughout the whole tenure of the institution. Klaus Schwab. Young Klaus Schwab was put in 1972, and it's an older Klaus Schwab today. Same guy. Okay? So you hang this sign out there in the middle of nowhere, in Davos, Switzerland. World Economic Forum, free seminars, global leaders encouraged to attend. Is that how you start something like that? How come you and me can't start something like that? If that's all it is, like you get 12 people down, you get them to sign something, you get a registered name, you spend $300, you open up a corporation in another country. There you go. You got a World Economic Forum. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to make sure that it becomes relevant when it needs to become relevant? And how are you going to make sure that its relevance grows more and more in the final decade and a half? Okay? This is the World Economic Forum. I mean, when you just strip it bare, it sounds like an absurd proposition. I'm going to start this think tank in Davos, Switzerland. But it's who started the think tank? What does it spin off of? Okay? Because none of these organizations are really new. A lot of them will go into hiding. You won't see a whole lot of public activity. That often happens after they've been outed in some significant way. A book has been written about them or something like this. This is the Bilderbergers. You know, this is the Council on Foreign Relations, although they still have a semi-decent reputation. It's the Club of Rome. It's the Committee of 300. It's all the same things over and over again, but operating with different satellite entities generationally. That way, the idea of novelty appears to be in play. Oh, there's a novel idea. Look at what they're talking about out of Davos, Switzerland. They have some very novel ideas there. Oh, would you look at that? They're telling us that the environment is going to grow to become the most significant political issue facing the human race. The environment, ladies and gentlemen. The environment. Air, earth, fire, and water. Wow. Wasn't that prescient? How did they get all that right? This little group of people in the middle of nowhere, Davos, Switzerland, given the seal of the saints by none other than everybody's favorite psychotic mass-killing centenarian, a person who lives to be 100 or more, Henry Kissinger. It's Kissinger who slid him in there. Okay, so who did Kissinger represent? Well, Kissinger is Club of Rome. Kissinger is Committee of 300. Kissinger is right at that level where the humans and the aliens interact, or the interdimensionals, or whatever you want to call it. He's probably seen the light with no plug go on and off a few times. So we're going to start this little mom and pop shop in the middle of nowhere, Davos, Switzerland. And we're going to call it the World Economic Forum because there's nothing at all ambitious about that. And we're going to make ourselves fashionable and relevant by hiring hot young leaders and the best Jewish minds money can buy, like Yuval Noah Harari. And we're going to persuade people to think in a certain way, and we're going to do it over 50 years very subtly. There is nothing done in human affairs that is done without intent. We don't operate on instinct, maybe sometimes, but human beings operate on intent. Nothing that a human being does, no human organization is accidental or incidental. They have purpose and they have meaning. What has this 52, 53-year purpose and meaning been for the World Economic Forum, which began when I was 6 years old in 1972? Trudeau was becoming something of an embarrassment for them. I don't know, I was going to say his charms, but I'm not sure he has any. His wiles, his shtick just wasn't working anymore. A little trick on progressive leaders. And you'll notice this, okay? And it's a very important thing to notice because it's a watershed of information and understanding on human beings. A watershed. Liberalism occurs in economic prosperity. All other forms of existence are for survival, and survival is always conservative. Never for a moment forget that a culture is the handed down wisdom on how to survive in the world. That's what a culture is. The inherited, preserved, and handed down wisdom on how to survive. From great-grandparent to grandparent, from grandparent to parent, from parent to you, from you to your children. If you don't have a culture, you don't have a plan. The strongest cultures in the world are the most resilient. We don't have anything in the West that we believe in collectively anymore. That may seem inconsequential as a series of words delivered to you in the podcast, the Talamanca Review. But I assure you, you have never heard more consequential words. You can't kill a people with a culture. The culture will give you warning signs. Where are our warning signs? Where is our culture protecting us? We don't have any culture. We haven't had culture for decades, as much as Taylor Sheridan would like to pretend we do, with his backward-looking nostalgia. Yellowstone, the life of the cattle rancher in the United States. And it's not just a regional phenomenon, it's in many ways a global phenomenon. The culture is still very strong in other parts of the world. For example, the culture in Costa Rica is very, very strong. Very strong culture here. They have a cultural remedy for every situation. Very reassuring to be in a culture like this. They have a remedy for everything. Justin Trudeau was very much involved in the mission of destroying culture. The mission given to Justin Trudeau by his handlers, and they all have handlers. Okay, they all come from certain camps. Doesn't mean that they don't all get together and enjoy a nice Wagyu steak together. It's just a game to them. It's like polo or tennis. It's not the life and death Hunger Games it is for the rest of us. It's just a game to them. That's how they live. They can't possibly understand what it's like to live for real. Mystifies them, beguiles them. Let me just get something here. Yeah. I'm just going to maybe throw some music on. There we go.
I wish I could swim like dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together, we can beat them forever and ever. How we can be heroes just for one day. How we can be heroes.
There we go. I just needed a quick little break there to top up my coffee, and I don't like to leave an empty screen here when I'm podcasting, so a little bit of Heroes by Peter Gabriel. Well, I'm trying to think of, a vein that I could mine here. Get my podcast legs back. I would say that it's probably 2025. I mean, how can everything not come to a head in 2025? How can it not at this point? I don't see it. I mean, I just do not understand how all of these conflicts cannot come to some form of a head. So war has been raging in the Middle East, a very savage war, since October 7th, 2023, which is the day that Hamas allegedly,
Just for one day.
which is the day that Hamas allegedly attacked the music festival in Israel, and allegedly killed 11 or 1,200 people, 1,500. And took a bunch of hostages, and they're alleged to have done some very ugly things, but I don't think that they did those things. And because of that October 7th attack by Hamas, which is, I think, maybe the largest attack they've mounted in I don't know how long, which I would also characterize as tactically ill-advised, was tactically ill-advised for Hamas to do that October 7th, 2023. I think if they were looking at it realistically within a framework of consequence and price for their actions, because there would be no free shot, that it was a tremendous miscalculation that in very many ways seems to have pushed their own country down a path of suicide. There's no way out of this now for Israel except outside help. No way out of it at all. Can't just stop at this point. Not with everything that's been done. I mean, I suppose they could give all the land back, make Lebanon and Syria whole again. But they're not going to do that. You know it and I know it. So how is that magically going to end in 2025? What is the connection between that conflict in Israel and the Israel in Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine? Well, I would say that in the lineups that form to air your grievances with the true force that allows things to be done on this planet, that there is a queue for Ukraine, and there's a queue for Israel, and there's a bunch of Jewish people in both lines making petitions for things to happen. What a truly sorry state the world is in. And there's not a thing wrong with it except us. The insanity of human beings. The inability of human beings to find peace within themselves, connection with life, and the inability of human beings to live in a modest way that doesn't conflict with others. That and the fact that there's a millennia-old control grid on this planet that has been doing great damage to us now for some time. And yet throughout all of this, human beings just go forward. As though the whole horror of it doesn't faze us at all. As if nothing fazes us. Because nothing really does faze us. Human beings are somewhat indomitable. Indeed. Somewhat indomitable indeed. Sometimes when you're trying to think something through and come up with some definitive answers that are going to change the way you live and behave, you want to go back to the foundation. The foundational thinking given to the world, given to the Western world, was just never enough. Was never really enough. I don't know if such a criticism can be made. I don't know who would receive it. But in my opinion, we were never given enough to function and grow and live as human beings are supposed to live. At least that's how it looks to me. And what about everything that's gone on already? How do you undo that? How do you uncry those tears? How do you put them back in the tear well? How do we rationalize everything that people have been through in the last several years? How do we finally rationalize Ukraine? And who can rationalize that anymore? Who allows things like that to happen? Who allows things like that to happen? Now, I'm not quite sure what the big reveal is going to be on Team Trump. I feel fairly certain, guessing, that it's not going to be anything too pleasant. If anyone had any delusions about Donald J. Trump doing things for reasons other than self-interest, or how he's going to look in history, well, we haven't been looking at the same guy. But that's fine for now. That seems to be exactly what's needed for now. Nothing better on the docket now. So Trudeau's job was to deculturalize a country, to remove all culture from it. It's like an operation, like a lobotomy, if you will, a national lobotomy. And I know the words I'm choosing to express myself tonight seem a little bit comical. But believe me when I tell you that I am being 100% serious. So Trudeau's job, what they want to know now, and you can see it in the experiments they run. You can especially see it in the British colonies. You can see it in Australia, you can see it in New Zealand, and you can see it in Canada. Okay? You can see what's coming. They're always test sites. So the goal of Canada was to destroy culture. Can you turn a country into basically a corporation where people live? Corporate nation state. Okay? Now you may say to yourself, what would possess somebody to want to do something like this? What could the possible motivation for this be? Well, let me tell you. They have come to the belief in their infinite wisdom that culture is no longer required, and in fact it is just an entanglement, and they don't want to go into the future with it. Culture produces all kinds of awkward things. It produces beliefs. It produces a fixed state of mind. It produces a definitive gender, male or female. It determines how you're going to live your life as you've been taught by your parents and grandparents. No culture, no future. Get it? I can't strip it down anymore. That is the barest I can make the idea. They basically want to turn the world into economic regions now, and they will treat certain types of worker a certain way. It's always been this way. When you look at the education system all through the 20th century, it's not working anymore, but it did for about 60, 70 years, everything from World War II. Everybody went through the same structure, the same shadow circuit of ideas, the Western canon, and became educated. We now have more educated people on the planet than ever before, and the world's never been in worse circumstances. Somebody explain that to me. Isn't education supposed to reduce these things? What is the value of education if it cannot reduce these things? What does reduce these things? Just yourself. That's the only thing that can really do it. Everything else will just be a stopgap until you find yourself. No other way to do it, no other way to think about it. Now the Trudeaus, and I've left no rock unturned in my discussion about the Trudeau family on the Telemanker Review. This has been a hobby horse of mine for a while now, since I think the beginning of the Telemanker Review. Very weird family. Old money family. Pierre, the father, was a dilettante as well, French intellectual dilettante. I believe the money in the family originally came from service stations, gas service stations. So the Trudeaus were in the energy business.
¿Cómo sigue el Diazo?
Huh?
¿Cómo sigue el Diazo?
Diago.
El del Diazo. La mutación. ¿Cómo sigue?
You know what's going on? My nephews just showed up here. Okay?
¿Cómo sigue el Diazo?
Oh, es... Mañana yo comprar la medicina.
Ajá.
Yeah.
Mañana viene Brandon, ¿ah?
Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. Just easing my way back into podcasting. So, I don't think anything is just going to magically disappear. I think that's fanciful thinking, and I think fanciful thinking should be left behind. I think all the problems of 2024 are going to go into 2025, but we're going to understand them a lot better because we're going to have a new perspective and a new context on them. A fella could lie up awake at night wondering what it is that's really going on here. "12 more days till the transition of power." It's too long, by the way. November 5th. November, December. It's 2.5 months. And I think from what we've seen in the 2.5 months that Harris and Biden have been in Washington getting ready to leave, I think that we've seen more than enough evidence that it is too long to leave a sitting government in. Yeah, so Trudeau became very embarrassing for them. It's amazing how much stuff has resurfaced on digital media in the last 2 weeks. His mother doing interviews from like the early 70s when he would have been born. Just a complete moron. Right? If you want to get a window into that hippie generation and the free love generation, go and watch a Margaret Trudeau interview from the early 70s. Yeah. He was gay. He was a communist. He was a serial killer. I suspect his son Justin is the same. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. I'm being literal. See, we don't know what goes on at that level of power. The curtain's been drawn back a little bit in the last 15 or 20 years. But it's going to be fully drawn back now. Then all of a sudden you got Trump coming into power and you got China talking about Taiwan again. Xi Jinping in his New Year's address. Yeah, so I don't think Taiwan's going to be escaping anywhere. Well, I think that's about it for tonight. I got to get my legs back, figure out what I'm talking about, where I'm going, get back into the news. There's a lot of stuff that goes into podcasting. I will do all that, though, and I'll be back at you, okay? I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.